Welcome to the Not On My Watch podcast, where real-life issues facing the family and the church are addressed with bold and uncompromising truth. It's time to reject the mediocrity of the day, live courageously in the face of danger, and declare, Not On My Watch. Here are your hosts, Jeff and Rochelle Ferguson.
Welcome to the Not On My Watch podcast. We're Jeff and Rochelle, and this podcast, it talks about parenting, talks about marriage, talks about the church, talks about ministry, life, and we want to talk about the effort to silence people in all of those areas.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't just a church issue or a parenting issue. This really goes into a whole lot of areas of this kind of, I don't know if it's a move. It's a trend. I don't know.
Sure seems like it's happening in a lot of places. Well,
it definitely is happening. So it's definitely probably a trend, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening in families, any system, work system, church system. You're hearing a lot of reports of people trying to silence other people for one reason or another.
Yes.
It just seems like, you said a trend. I don't know. It just seems like a growing trend.
Yeah. This effort to silence people, which really becomes like the enemy of healing. Right. So that's why we titled today's podcast, Silence, the Enemy of Healing. So just basics. If you want to just reverse things, bringing things out into the open, bringing things into the light, that is the opposite of enemy. I mean, that is the avenue for healing. Yes. Jesus talks about that, like everything that is hidden will be brought into the light. I think that's in Matthew. But then you also have the Apostle Paul talking about in Ephesians when he says, like basically things done in the dark, we don't even really want to talk about those. Everything that is brought into the light, that is manifest, then there's an opportunity for healing.
I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but you can start at the very beginning, the first words of Scripture, where there was nothing.
And then Jesus said,
God said, what did he do? He said something with a word, let there be light, and there was light. You look at Moses. What did Moses, in the midst of an impossibility, Moses said, let my people go. And eventually it was God who freed the Israelites. You bring it all the way into Jesus. Jesus was a very big, huge proponent of, like you said, let's take things that are hidden in the dark and let's expose them. Let's shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
So,
and then the Apostle Paul says, for everything that is brought into the light will become visible, will be seen. And this whole idea of secrecy, this is a parenting tip that really goes in it. Like when my children were young, we've kind of moved out of some of those stages, but when they were young, we didn't do secrets. We were very intentional of not even poking fun of with our kids, going, hey, I've got a secret. Let me tell you a secret. Yeah. Because secrets are scary. If an adult is telling a kid to keep a secret,
and
that's scary.
Even
and
if
we are seeing this in like what should be functional adult organizations, families, all these secrets.
Oh my!
And secrets is the enemy of healing.
Absolutely, our verbiage matters. Even if it was a secret that, like a birthday party,
like we would say surprise.
Surprise!
We're gonna have a surprise.
I remember stumbling on occasion, said, the secret, and our girls would be like, "Dad," I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry," like holding me accountable because it is important. The words we use. We didn't want our girls to grow up in an environment where secrets were commonplace.
I think about this, it's like we don't have secrets in our family. Like, we don't talk about that.
Yeah. Oh no.
I think about that movie Encanto. We don't talk about Bruno. Like we don't talk about but like we bring that. Some of you are like, what? It's a really catchy song. I won't sing it right now. But we're seeing this trend, and I think we could talk about how this is being done, and maybe we should talk about that. I think that's true, but like the why. I think that might even, I mean, we could talk about how this, and we've got stories.
I think we probably should spend a little bit of time talking how, because people are like, okay, so is it always where people are coming and saying, oh, don't say this? Or, are they, how are some ways, because I think it can be very subtle. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it.
Oh, I do know it can be subtle.
But it's often maybe most of the time.
And not everybody who's asking you to keep something quiet has this sinister motive.
Right.
So I'm not sitting here going like, well, everybody is sinister in these motives. I think some people are, but not everybody. Maybe it's because we've just seen it done this way so much that we think, well, that's normal. Like I think about church. We live in a litigious society where, your coffee is too hot at a place, you can sue. So now, like on every cup of coffee, it says like, warning, the contents are really hot. And it's like, well, yeah, I actually want them to like scold me,
Extra hot, please.
Like that's like how I order it. But that's the kind of society we live in. And yet, so like the church has adapted to this society. And like, I wonder how much average churchgoer or whatever realizes how much pressure is being put on people to sign like confidentiality agreements. Things that say, yes, I know this happened, but I won't talk about it. And I understand, like, the origin of this was for businesses. Like, for example, if I had a secret recipe and I hire an employee, I don't want my employee to go and sell that secret recipe to my competitors. And I understand that. And, maybe there's some places for that, but, like, we're talking about the church.
Well,
we don't have a secret...
No.
salvation that we don't want everyone to know about.
I mean, full disclosure, I don't think I've always in myself necessarily been against like a confidentiality policies, because I was looking through one lens. I was looking through, well, of course, if we're talking about information, you don't want to hurt people, so let's keep confidential what needs to be confidential. But what I've seen is
the abuse of that.
The weaponization of a confidentiality policy to where abuse is hidden or anything is hidden. And when that happens, what you do is you just continue to make a victim of the victim, so to speak. And so,
and a cycle gets
and a cycle is repeated. And so now from this end, I'm looking, going, like you said, I don't think we should have a function for these confidentiality policies or non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. So. I think we really need to rethink these. Yes.
Well, and I know there are some people who are listening going, yeah, I hear you, but not everybody needs to know everything. Well, yeah, I agree. Do we need to run around telling everything? No. But if you don't recognize how these are used to enable people to continue to get away with bad behavior, I'm not talking like, oh, they're just a little gossiper, which although I think is a real problem. I'm not like trying to minimize gossip. I'm talking literally about sexual abusers. And I unfortunately have had my eyes opened. So as far as to that, like I think about this in my life. I always thought, well, if somebody would come, with an accusation or something, about, sexual abuse, everybody would want that to be investigated. Like everybody would want that to be like, of course you would want that to, who in their right mind would want to cover over that? And I unfortunately have realized that no, there's actually a lot of people who don't want things brought out into the open, and not even to get people quote unquote thrown into jail or anything like that, but even just to protect maybe even the reputation of somebody, or to protect other potential people. I'm like, really? Like I thought everybody would want to bring things into the light, and and that's not always the case. No. So these kind of confidentiality things can do that. Also, then when people are hesitant to sign these or to agree to these things, then there becomes a level of bullying or ostracism. Like, oh, yeah, okay, well, we're going to try to bully you into doing this.
And we're going to try to get a group of people and just to pressure you and to ostracize you and to, no, you're exactly right. And you feel, as the person who just wants truth out into the light, what you feel is, man, like, I don't want to cause a problem, but this is a problem that needs to be spoken about. And this bullying is going to make you feel like the problem. Like,
well, that's what it's intended to do.
You're the one.
Right.
And a tactic that I've heard a lot is, well, we want to protect the unity of whether it's a family or a church. We want to be unified. And can I just say, unity around any kind of secrecy or dysfunction isn't unity at all. And so
unity around a lack of transparency is not unity, it's a cover-up.
Absolutely. It's absolutely
and so yes, does Jesus want his church to be unified? 100%. But he also wants his church to walk in light and to walk in truth. And that's where unity is really found. When you're walking in, covering things up, and you're just going, that's like the mafia. Like I'm serious.
No, you're
like,
exactly right.
You know, you talk about like the mafia, like they're not going to crack on each other because they know they're going to get killed. You know, like, and so this isn't about. I mean, I think about, you know, there's a lot of talk about unity, and I think unity is a wonderful goal around truth.
Yeah, right. As long as it's around truth.
But like we say like, oh, but it's so important to be unified. No, truth is more important.
Yes.
Truth is more important because I think about, like, I'm a student of World War II. You want to talk about unity? There was a whole lot of unity around Hitler, at least. We could talk about like in 1941. Now I understand things changed, and if you study history, you know, he didn't, you know, when he was elected, he didn't have all the unity, but then things changed, and there was a whole lot of unity around atrocity.
Oh my
so
God.
You can be unified around, I mean, let's look at the history of cults. I mean, like, we don't even have to go far to study for that. So truth, unity is noble, but not with truth.
Absolutely.
Or secrecy not present. And then I think also just this encouragement to only speak positive things.
Like, you're not going to share negative things. And of course we want to be positive, but that's synonymous. Often what I found is that word positive is synonymous with you're just going to basically help cover over and make things look good, right? And I'm thinking I'm going to tell the truth. So, you know, I want to be positive, but I want to share truthful positive things. So
right. Whatever it needs to be, the truth needs to be shared. So why do we see these things?
Question. Why?
The question is like, why, you know, why are we seeing this in Christian organizations or the church, or why are we seeing this in families? Why would we, in Christian families? Like I think about, why would we see this? And why would people, you know, want to silence other people?
Well, I think the first thing we talk about is silence allows issues to remain in the dark. When you're silent about something, it allows whatever the issue or issues are to remain hidden. It's when someone says something about it that it's like, oh, you ever heard of it's a secular phrase called, we don't want to open a Pandora's box, okay? Meaning we don't want to share this because if we share this, it's going to cause more problems than what it's going to solve. And when things remain in the dark, what happens? Things fester. Things, it gets infected. I mean, it just grows worse. But when things are allowed to get into the light, that's when healing can occur. And that's why there are people want to silence other people, is because they just want to keep things hidden. Just lock it up, just put it away, and let's not talk about that.
Yeah, and I hear you, and that's hard.
Yeah.
I think that's hard because I think my thought is like, doesn't everybody want our family or our system or our organization or our church to be healthy? And the answer is really no.
Right.
Not everybody wants that. I mean, you have to look around, like dysfunctional families sometimes, or dysfunctional people, which I know even we talk about this, that even becomes like, I can't believe she said that. Well, no, because if we're broken, we don't have to remain broken. Mm-hmm. But these families that operate in dysfunction, they don't want to bring it to the light because they really don't want to be healed. This is comfortable. Mm-hmm. It's comfortable to stay in dysfunction. I know how to operate in dysfunction.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even it's a power play. Like in dysfunction, I'm needed.
Yes. Yeah.
In dysfunction, I can rule the dysfunction. I don't know how to rule function.
So what we have is oftentimes a culture created where people don't know how to operate in health, in healing, and so they have to help create.
Really, it's like self-preservation,
right? Where there's things remain in the dark, and I don't know who said it, but it's a widely known quote saying, "Whatever you can't talk about owns you."
Oh, absolutely.
Or controls you.
Yeah.
And so we have a whole lot of controlled people walking around simply because they're not talking about, or they don't feel like they can talk about a secret that has been hidden for years.
You know, silence is the enemy of healing too, because it keeps victims in a perpetual state of victimization. You know, one of the first steps in healing, if you know, I mean, just even like basics is to talk about something. I didn't say to obsess over or to gain your identity over it, right, but to talk about it. If you can't talk about something, there's not going to be a whole lot of healing. And I think about if anybody's gone through something difficult, you need some safe people to talk to about it.
Yeah.
And you know, people could absolutely challenge you. Yeah, absolutely. They could maybe even challenge, well, why did you feel that way? Of course. Yeah. Like we need those people too. But sometimes you need somebody who's just going to listen.
Yeah.
Because it helps you to get out of that place.
And I think people are scared of this one, rightfully so, because let's not pretend that when we begin talking about something, it's going to be like this incredible conversation and, oh, we can experience healing. Quite honestly, there may be some very difficult conversations that are going to cause a lot of pain before they cause healing, but you can't just continue to ignore it.
Yeah.
And so I think allowing people to, personally, I would never want to keep something hidden and just continue to, knowingly or unknowingly, continue to victimize someone. I want people to walk in freedom.
Well, and if you continue to silence somebody, if there is a perpetrator or, you know, somebody, which this is real.
Yes.
It allows them to continue to walk in that.
Yes.
Which honestly is not even healthy for them. I mean, you're talking about somebody who needs to be brought out into the light. And I think I already kind of mentioned this, but it allows dysfunctional systems to continue in this pattern. And dysfunctional families, for example, continue a pattern of dysfunction. It's just much more difficult for somebody to get out of that pattern. You have to intentionally recognize the trappings of a dysfunctional family or the trappings of dysfunctional church or a dysfunctional organization. You have to recognize
it. And it's hard because we want to boil everything down to, I'm sure it's the leader. I'm sure it's the mom or the dad. I'm sure it's this. Well, these systems are systems. They're complex networks of relationships where the reason the whole system or part of the system can be dysfunctional is because a whole lot of people worked to keep that in one way or another. They did something or they didn't do something that they should have done. So it's not always, oh yeah, it's that person. Oh, it's the leader, or it's not all. It's really a silent majority often that allowed it. And so I think the issue is, I tell you what, silence is never good. Silence is never freeing. And I believe whether it's a family, a church, or a marriage, man, we just need to begin to talk. Can I just say this? Not everybody has skeletons in their closet. Mm-hmm. I know people are like, well, everybody has skeletons. Not everyone has skeletons in their closet. We need to get back. What did Jesus say? He said, what I've whispered in your ear, shout from the rooftops. So let's be people who expose and shine the light on darkness.
I want to make one point as we wrap up. You said not everybody has skeletons in their closets. I think about, there was this song, we heard it, we were visiting a church I want to say it was almost a year ago, not quite, probably like 10 months ago. And I just remember it was really cold and it snowed that day, I think, or something. Or I don't know, it was just cold. And they sang this song. I mean, it was a church that I would have never gone to. It was kind of random how we ended up attending. Not like there was something wrong with the church. We didn't know anybody there. It was just kind of a lot of circumstances led us to that morning. And there was this guy playing a song and I didn't know it. It was like a new song to me at the time. And he said, the lyrics go, I wasn't made to be tending a grave.
Oh, yeah.
I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more.
Oh,
and
I love that song.
I was like, it resonated with me that morning. And it kind of just, when you said, not everybody has skeletons in their closets, I think about that. We're not meant to be tending a grave. We're not meant to be tending secrets.
Yeah. No.
Or tending, maybe not even our secrets, maybe other people's secrets. That's not what we weren't made to be tending a grave of all these skeletons. We were made to be brought out into the open. We were made for more. We were made for life. And where there is talking, where there is opening up, where there is breath, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.
Yes.
And where the Spirit of the Lord is where truth and grace and justice and love reign. And so if you find yourself being silenced, and I think we have a lot more to say on this.
Oh, yeah. We have
like a lot more stories. I think about confidentiality agreements and some things. I didn't get into all the stories about that.
But we will.
Even if you're the only one who won't sign something, you've got to do it. And I think about that. So there'll be a follow-up to this at some
definitely.
point. But we just felt so strongly, like people being, no, you weren't made to tend a grave. You weren't made to tend to all these secrets. Bring it out into the light. There's healing and there's freedom. And I just think there's something really powerful about that.
So powerful. Go ahead and share this episode. Rate, review on Apple Podcasts. Tell someone about it. I hope this brings hope to somebody. But until then, we'll see you right here on the next episode of the Not On My Watch podcast. We'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Not On My Watch podcast. You are a watchman for this time and hour. Don't forget to subscribe and rate this podcast wherever you listen. If you haven't already, head on over to our website, www.notonmywatch.co, for more resources from Jeff and Rochelle. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the next episode. But until then, keep watchful.